Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. On this channel, we've spoken about the India narrative. We've spoken about Bharat, India, and Hindustan. The narrative of a country cannot be built up by just one idea. It has to be an amalgamation of many ideas put together, and then where the country will start thinking as to what it should be going into the future. Narrative is also just not understanding who you are, it is also about telling the world who you are and what you stand for this very, very interesting game which is being played. And I'm going to call it a game because at the end of it, we are in a place and we are in times where we really don't know what's going to happen in the future. Take an example of what's happening in the neighborhood. For example, the Pakistanis. You have, the entire country going up in flames because of a particular narrative. So let's understand this a little deeper with Major General Brajesh Kumar, who I've been following in on Twitter for a while, who puts out some very insightful tweets. I thought let's get him involved within the Dev Talks journey. Sir, hello and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me for this discussion on India.
Thank you, Aadi. Thank you for inviting me to your show. And very good afternoon, namaskar to our viewers, whoever, wherever they are. Let's try and make it very interesting, as this is the world is going through a very interesting phase.
So, today the story of anything has to be very precise. And we were just discussing offline, how narratives get built up online and stuff like that. The game today is so different that the narrative literally changes every day, right? Because these narratives are built upon very flimsy facts. They just come, they create chaos, and they just wipe off. But having said that, a country's narrative cannot be like that. It has to be built upon certain substance. What should that substance be for India that India can tell to the world, sir?
India, actually, narrative building is something new and extremely fascinating. Why I say it's fascinating? Because Indians have been, over the period of time, generally underdogs. Somebody else set it, the narrative. We follow through with a bit of didactics, telling people this is good, this is not so good, etc., etc. But now things are changing. It's a very interesting phase in the world as well. And India, in last over 7, 8 years, has matured a lot. If I say strategically, it has also learned to punch, not only at its weight, above its weight. And that's a very key, significant statement which I am making. And the other aspect of this narrative is this is not in the air. This is not just built up on our idea or a hush hush thing or rumors, which is so very popular, which is so very effective in building a narrative. India's narrative is India's growth story, which is based on this little growth story, if I may say so. And other aspect is India is proactive, building a narrative based on its experience, its heritage. It has a wonderful heritage over thousands of years. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is very much part. So having said that, the second aspect is why do we need to build a narrative? In the information age, where technology is so goddamn powerful, we can influence people either way. We would like to shape India's destiny ahead on a narrative which is credible, which is useful, which people can follow. And that kind of a narrative we are building now, as we see, is one of the best sort of a global, some might say tamasha. It's not really a tamasha, a very substantive kind of a event which is happening in India, where India is trying to set the narrative in large number of ways. And I'm pretty sure we sanguine that since it is set on terra firma, on issues which have done, issues which are visible, issues which have afflicted the entire world community, and possibly our demonstrated performance makes us believe that our narrative is strong, our narrative is credible, and we are in a position to leverage this negative for a better future for our people, for our citizens. So that's the story of India's narrative in today's environment.
You mentioned, the most interesting thing that I'd like to talk about is the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam that people talk about, which has been put out by the Prime Minister. People have not understood this. It's a very simple interpretation: one world, one family, one future. That's fine. What are we trying to project with these two words, sir? What is it that India wants to tell?
You see, coming back to international relationships, international management, the richy rich, the powerful, whether it's UNSC or G7 or a smaller portion of population in the Western world, coupled with Japan and maybe Russia, which has since been thrown out, decided what is to be done for the violence 97% of the world populace. And we've seen how it went through. Now, India's narrative on one world, one family, one future, the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, is based on heritage, which is ancient, based on taking people together for development, or even, shall I say, look back to our ancient religion followed in this world. You can follow any god, not an issue, as long as you are together doing things for the common good. In that, the world today, and especially in India, we have seen how the poorer people, the people in the bottom of pyramid, have suffered through and through. Taking it more specific in the recent past, what happens when there's a COVID kind of a disease spreading in the world? Who suffers? Not the rich, not the wealthy, not the haves. Of course, in this case, they also suffered partially, but the poorer are the worst kind of a time. Those who survive have issues of money, food, other health requirements. It was true for India, it was true for people across the world. In that, the actions initiated by this old civilization during this great pandemic probably made us understood the value of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam inside first, in our own country. You see, you take any parameter, number of people afflicted by the disease, the death rate, the hospitalization, and how pandemic did not even touch the rural poor. There is something innate in us, our ability to manage things under difficult conditions, without resources, with basically respect for fellow feelings, growth in harmony, looking after nature, and things of that sort. So this was that one aspect of it. There was a deeper aspect of it. The COVID time was a tough time for humanity, and India too as well. the government did push in fair amount of reform, shall we say, pushing things of connectivity, whether it's digital connectivity, whether it is banking, and then linking the two, looking after those people to feed, to get over the bad time, as also the vaccine, this development, managing to vaccinate 100 crore people with the indigenous vaccine is no joke. And imagine the problems the government would have had with regards to import of vaccine. One aspect. More importantly, we help the poorer nations
Hmm.
in the world by exporting vaccines. Of course, there was a little tamasha inside here because we are suffering. How are we exporting? Anyway, we were able to balance the two by using a window of opportunity. In addition, we were the pharmacy capital. We also exported pharmacy and medicines to poor people around. Now, all this we have done ourselves for our people, which is something very, very great. If I will add something more which we have done, it's phenomenal. This digital backbone, we have been able to get a digital identity to each of our citizens. We have been able to open bank accounts where each family sure has a bank account. It worked out to 55 million bank accounts in a very close period of time.
Yeah.
Now, through this, we linked the electronic highway, or shall we say a data highway, whether it's a broadband connectivity or to cellular phone. Now, linking of these three, they call it the jam, Trinity, helped us to do phenomenal amount of things. So we found that we have used this opportunity or adverse situation to create an opportunity to manage our people, to manage our family in a very coherent and a good way, thereby setting an example to the whole world. And this precisely is the message we are trying to project to the world, that in as far as the world is concerned, it has seen a very uh, tough times with regards to the COVID. And before the COVID got over, there was this war, unwanted, with the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia-Ukraine war, what happened? Problems of food, problems of fuel. Result, economy goes for a six. Now there are nation states which are bankrupt. I believe the numbers are very large, 100 plus, who are not in a position to pay back the debt which the nation has taken. They require food grains. They require petroleum products. They require fertilizer. Now, all this is an issue which affects the entire world, but more to the poorer people and more to the poorer nation. So, this is in addition to the issue of climate change, which is bothering us, sustainable development. So, you find that amidst all this, the India's story of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam becomes very, very credible for two reasons. A, we done it at home in a very good manner, exemplary manner, if may say so. Secondly, the world environment requires a thing thought process, a concept like this. And this, I suppose, India is in a position by virtue of dynamic, strategic leadership, deft diplomacy, and manifestation of its well wishers and friends. To put it in the dialogue, uh, in the floor of G20 summit, and hopefully, not all of it, some of it does get materialized into the final document, which is prepared at the end of the our period of India's presidency. So we find that the soul, the old dictum, the old civilization of India, talking about one world, one family, one future, is apt, and we are in a good position to have its acceptance in the body, which is huge. After all, G20 today is a huge, huge body. However, said that, the work has to continue with larger vigor, and we must do our little bit.
Oh, absolutely. So there's no question. It's a never-ending game. I mean, it's a never-ending task of things that needs to be done. So, you know, there is also the tagline of Vishwaguru. Now, it is very badly misinterpreted within India itself. Everybody thinks we want to be the leader of the world and, become the dominant power and this and that. And the idea of Vishwaguru is not a dominating hegemon, which is what, when you talk about a leader, everybody says USA, or USA is a hegemon. They've got that authority. India also wants to do the same thing. Is that so, sir?
You know, very rightly brought about this aspect of Vishwaguru. Actually, Indians traditionally excel in such kind of a thing. Our foreign policy also, if you look through the 50s and 60s and 70s, were didactic. ऐसा होना चाहिए. This is right. So, to some people it comes in handy. I don't think so. See, we have so much to do for our own people. We have so much to do to attain, shall I say, strategic independence, to get our act together. That Vishwaguru, in the concept which is understood by most of us, are dominating one thought, one great philosopher, friend, and guide. That may not be quite true, but yes, in a different context, we can be the guiding principle. After all, India's soft power is helping good, and in recent years, we see it going beyond frontiers. It's doing pretty well. When we say that, well, we built about 30 million houses. It's a great, great thing. When we say we we provided pipe water supply to 324 million people across the country, which is as good as the size of a huge, huge country. Or we provided the digital banking connectivity to our people is a huge in number that everybody is banked. So these are good things. But it does not mean that we become Vishwaguru. Obviously, at some point of time, we should be sharing our experiences and helping people, helping poorer nations of the world the, to, to achieve what we have done. Vishwaguru per se is a trap. As I see it, it is best avoided. However, in a noisy democracy like India, these are part of the narrative or counter narrative as we see. So, what I would say is we are in the process of becoming some kind of a guru, if you may call it, based on our soft power, which you exhibited, based on our acceptance of our culture and traditions in the global area, whether yoga was one for the example, which has been lapped up by anybody and everybody, the aspects of sustainable development, climate changes, hard crops like millet acceptance. All these help us doing that. But we are certainly, I would like to not fall into this trap of Vishwaguru per se, but yes, we are in line for something bigger, something worthwhile, which will help us shape destiny of our own people. After all, our interest is self. We are the largest nation in terms of population today. Imagine 60% or 50% of people below the age of 20. Where will they go? We have to find an answer. I personally put it, with the shrinking population of Western Europe, Russia, Japan, even some other nations, even China will shrink. Well, we got to think it differently. Soft power remains a vehicle, and it makes sense to pursue this line. Getting into the trap of Vishwaguru, well, we'll take it up some other time in future when we also have the hard power then. Presently, work in progress as I see it.
Absolutely. I mean, because at the end of it, power constitutes all segments of power. It's military, economic, diplomatic, and everything like that. So, I want to ask you about the outreach that India has done. I mean, you hinted towards the COVID, the kind of outreach that we were able to project during COVID, post COVID, in these evacuations that have taken place, the support that was sent to Turkey. A lot of people didn't like that because, of course, Turkey has its own very funny views about India. But that apart, leaving all that aside, uh, how do you see the outreach being conducted by India in terms of a humanitarian approach? What we've done with Afghanistan is absolutely, I don't think the UN combined together has done what we've done in terms of sending food, in terms of sending medicines, and this and that. How do you see this approach, sir, and what is the message that we are sending across to the world?
I think possibly it comes to us naturally. Even before the recent spate of things which we have done, uh, during when you're becoming an emerging power, if
Hmm.
you recall way back when the tsunami took place, we were hit as well. Uh, I was then serving and visited the Andaman Nicobar Island, which was badly hit, and the Tamil Nadu coast. But we were out. Our ships were out helping Sri Lanka with support. So even earlier, but in the recent past, our outreach with regards to disaster mitigation, disaster management has been phenomenal. In fact, with the current political dispensation, we have been exceedingly quick. Since you talked about Turkey recently, imagine sending a contingent of paramilitary in addition to the field ambulance of the Indian Army. Complete operational unit within 48 hours,
Hmm.
landing up in Turkey and Syria. Not easy. Where you find that decision making itself takes a long, long time, irrespective of the outcome or the outrage one might say. Because in foreign policy, the leadership takes a position based on their political interests. It is not necessarily what is right or what is wrong. But the fact that we sent out a set of team with medical help within 48 hours into the country is registered by the people of it, people of that nation who have a long, long memory. Similarly, earlier in Nepal, The earthquake took place. We were there. We are the first responders, actually.
Yeah.
I say we've been saying to the army here in J&K and Northeast earlier, first responders on any emergency. The same is true for India. Whether we evacuated students, a very large number of our own students who got stuck in Ukraine, or was it fairly recently in South Sudan, the Indians were stuck, or in Yemen a couple of years back when we got stuck. And mind you, it must have been a nightmarish for the government people who did it. It's phenomenal the way they did it. So this kind of an outreach to our people, something again very, very new. And this is visible. So therefore, when I said that we are punching above our weight, it's something very good. It's music to our ear. When you see your chief executive or the prime minister in the center stage, whether G7 meeting, whether it is ward meeting, or anywhere else for that matter, you feel nice about it. No Indian would feel happy if he has his prime minister or chief executive or head of government is somewhere in the corner. So the point we're trying to say is these initiatives on disaster management, disaster mitigation by 140 crore of us helps us, the chief executive, our head of government, our prime minister, to hold his head high on any table, discuss any matter. I never thought, or I don't think ever in the history of independent India have we held our head so high. So these are not only acts of good nature for a
Mm.
neighbor, a good action being helpful, but also helps us grow our soft power, which is an essential ingredient of diplomacy and long term goodwill, which is actually crucial. Nation state and people remember the good things as they remember the bad things as well. So, to my mind, it's been a wonderful sort of initiative by the Indian political leadership, uh, whether it is these or also our commitment to whether UN forces with regards to peacekeeping and peace enforcement. India has always been doing that, but now it's good that we do that and possibly get a share of accolades which we gracefully acknowledge.
The factor is that we've sent help knowing the factor that we will not be even getting a broken thank you from there, and that's a huge statement in itself. That's a huge outreach in itself, and that tells you that okay, we want to help. You don't want to say thank you, you have your views on this and that, that's fine, but that particular country, the Turkey, might not be acknowledging it, but the world around it acknowledges, and it was very evident with the way PNG's president met Prime Minister Modi, uh, because, and I agree with when Prime Minister says that it's not Modi meeting so and so, it's 140 crore Indians meeting so and so, and that's a very telling statement. I mean, it sounds like very little bit, but it's the representation of India which is there. So the respect which is shown to the Prime Minister is the respect for this particular country. Of course, there's respect for that person, but the country stands behind him and does whatever it does, and the actions speak after that. So coming, somewhere towards the end, I want to ask you is about the factor that India has always been blamed that you've not been able to tell your story, especially with regards to its adversaries. Now we've spoken about an outreach, a global outreach, but as far as the adversaries are concerned, we've always seen that India's had to come out and explain stuff, whereas that doesn't happen in other countries. Other countries take actions, tuck, 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 and it's believed. But in our country, the kind of polarization that we've got, every little thing, even the armed forces done is questioned. Now, what kind of a narrative that makes, and how do you fight something like that, sir? And I'm not wanting to, sorry, but I'm not wanting to get political about it. This is a scenario I also notice in the Americans. They decredit their army, and discredit their army very often. Is this a bane of a democracy, sir?
I think a very sort of pertinent and a tough one at that, but it's a fact. The beauty of democracy is, that you abuse your the ruler whom you don't like. Of course, the Indians take it to another extreme. That's possibly because some say we haven't matured the way we should have. Like we have an elected government in a democracy. So it's your government, but the attitude from the British time carries on. So when the Britishers were there, you did a dharna, you did a strike, you broke government property, you burned the railways and buses. Well, why the hell are we doing it now? So I suppose a bit of it is a legacy issue, and it will come up, and hopefully we mature. I'm sure with education, with affluence, with more interconnected world, it will happen. Coming to your first question, this business of our adversary, it's been a legacy issue for us. In fact, if you look at our borders, both with the western neighbor and the northern neighbor, LOC and LAC. Since what? So many years, 75 odd years, we are stuck with it. So the outreach program and philosophy of managing them would be difficult. Would be different, not difficult, different. But having said that, the hard power will have a role to play. One would notice that till about 15, 20 years back, India was very happy equating itself to a western neighbor, much smaller in economy, smaller in size, smaller in armed forces, smaller in armed. So it was basically thinking, a mindset then, not only with one set of people, political, military, the press, and everybody. Some can say, okay, the reason was, closer to, partition and its overhang. Well, that's a very defensive kind of an argument. Only today we have understood your Patidwandi, if I may say so, in a more clear fashion, is your northern neighbor, and you got to prepare for it. While the soft power is there, you require a fair amount of hard power
Yeah.
to be able to have a strategic independence. Now, a nation like ours, which has been dependent on arms and ammunition, mind you, we have been the largest importer of munitions systems, arms, aircraft, ships, and whatever for decades now. It becomes difficult.
Yeah.
Fortunately, this has been understood by the country today, by the nation's leadership today, political, and also military in the think tank. The Atmanirbhar Bharat is a modest beginning, but mind you, it doesn't create results in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. It takes about a decade. Second, weaning away our support, our supply from omnipresent the Soviet era to Western world is in the process. After all, we got the French aircraft, the American helicopters, and C-30 and Hercules, whatever. So we are doing that. So what I presume is, well, the amalgam of hard and soft power will makes a country say so rather strongly and clearly. So we are not yet there. It's a work in progress. And another give India a decade of strong moorings and strong leadership and commitment. It will happen. And the aspect about electoral policy and playing with kid gloves to a section of electorate is nothing very, very new. It happens in all the democracy. Yes,
Everywhere, sir.
are little, shall I say, very noisy democracy. We talk a lot. हम हल्ला बहुत मचाते हैं. So things get shouted. The other day, talking to somebody in Australia, he said, during peak of COVID, he said, we do not force vaccination. I said, why? He says, the democracy is mature, the winning losing percentage is very narrow, and these people who have 2.5%, they call the shots. They can swing the election. We've seen that happening in US as well. There's no forcing. So when you say that, are we soft because of political compulsion? Those are there. Those are part of democracy. But it does not mean in hardcore calculations at the governmental level, at the strategic level, we are soft. The work is as business as usual, and we carry on. That India comes first, always and every time, irrespective of the political dispensation.
That I think is a bottom line that India needs to learn, sir. Sir, lastly, the idea of India has been projected post independence. It's only now that we've been talking about the prehistorical, the historical, the medieval India and stuff like that, that we've brought it out into the world domain. We've brought out these stories and stuff like that. One of the biggest things is this scepter, which is going to be placed in the parliament. Although this has been put into a very political sort of a trend, but if you can just see that there's such a long history to this one piece, one stick, walking stick, which is so called a walking stick. It's not. It's a great piece of history. Now, when you look at the history of that itself, it is amazing. But the story that has been, which has been till now put across to the world, is yeah, it's a golden colored ancient walking stick. I mean,
Uh, True, actually, we've seen it much more. In the armed forces, we got commissioned in the early, just before the war. Those days, 47 was too close a period where the British had left. The influence was very large in the armed force, which I have felt. So, very small example. The children of the service of army officers will have very anglicized, funny-looking names. You know, because you aligned yourself to a culture which is different. But over a period of time, it has got changed. In a similar vein, as I see it, the Mughal rule, thereafter the Britishers, uh, their influence on our thinking, their education system, willy nilly, would have probably forced us or inhibited our own, standing ourselves as a good citizen, as a true citizen of the nation. So, having said that, that is true of any subjugated set of people across the world. But yes, we have taken a little longer to understand our heritage, our history, which is ancient, our civilization, and look for motivating stories, look for heroes from there, which can shape the generation next. So that is happening now. In the same vein, a child born today, whether it's north, south, east, west, the parents go into get hold of a Hindi dictionary or a vernacular dictionary to find a good ancient name which has a good meaning to carry the legacy forward. So what actually has happened is transformation of India, its people over last couple of decades and more pronounced in the last 7, 8, 9 years with the thrust of leadership trying to look make people look inwards towards yourself, recognizing yourself, gaining your identity has made a comeback, and that's something very great. And when you have an identity, I'm not talking of the digital identity, talking of an Indian identity, your heritage, your sanskaram, that gets when it spreads into a community through education, through interactions. That means the time has come. India has come of age. There is no looking back. From fifth largest economy today, it's a question of time. Largest growing economy, major economy in the world, stable economy, adding value across the world. Now we have a prime minister of Indian origin in key Western world. I see things going very well. And coming back to the Chola stick which you talked of, the coronation stick, it is has a meaning, and I'm sure in the age of knowledge workers, knowledge people, people would love to explore and get more such motivating stories of our past, which is huge, which is sacred, which is unexplored, and large amount of research can be done across the length and the breadth of the country.
A good point to end up our interview, sir. Thank you so much for this. This has been quite a interesting one. These are few terms that are thrown around the world and thrown around in the public domain with, I don't think the clear understanding of what they actually mean has been achieved within our society, sir. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is basically a it's a very large term which you've actually brought about. It's not just these two words, one word, one family, one future. The problem is when you translate it, it becomes so meaningless that
True.
it loses its value itself. You're not trying to say that it's one family and I'm the head. You're saying that it's one family, I'm a part of that family, and I will do whatever it takes to keep that family together and healthy, safe, and well fed. Thank you so much, sir. It's a pleasure interacting with you, and I hope this is a beginning of our relationship in terms of dev talks, and we can actually do many more of these insightful conversations in the future. Till then, sir, till another subject and another interesting topic. Jai Hind.
Thank you and Jai Hind to you. God bless.
Thank you, sir.